I'm going to start anyway, and we'll leave a minute for people to come in because it always takes a second for them to connect. Not everybody is super there when we start, but it's really nice to already have some names. Hi, people who are just joining us. We're just going to have a little bit of time for people to join before we dive into our very interesting session today. But it's really good to see some familiar names already in the crowd. It's really good. And I'm really happy to again lead a session and to have my favorite background. I know probably no one else cares about virtual backgrounds. I do, and I like this one. Right, well, with that, I think, you know, everybody had a little bit of time to join. Christina's saying hi in the chat. So let's kick off today's session. We're here to talk about ocean plastics with our three very great panelists. They're all familiar to TFF. But today are here to tell us all about their experiences and their expertise. So we're going to answer some questions like how much plastic swims in our oceans? How does food packaging contribute to marine pollution? What alternatives do we have as consumers and startups that rely on packaging material to keep products fresh? So leading the discussion today will be Divya Mohan. She's a food technologist and former TFF Challenge participant. She's going to present some facts and background knowledge about plastics that pollutes the planet's oceans at the beginning. And a little bit of background to her. So in 2017, Divya initiated a student project at Lund University in Sweden, looking for alternatives for plastic straws. And today her project has developed into the full-fledged food tech company Ooble Innovations, which develops products that bridge sustainability, innovation, and convenience. And we'll definitely hear about that in a little bit. She's joined by Ryan Robinson, who is co-founder of AEROPOWDER, in 2018 TFF Challenge finalist and winner of the Kirchner Prize. And we also have Gerald Marin, who's also a previous TFFer, 2014, runner-up actually with his company called FoPo. He's now working global packaging innovation and sustainability lead at InBev and is the director of Rethink plastic organization. But you'll hear about them a little bit later when they introduce themselves. So today, a little bit of housekeeping before I hand over to Divya. We're here for an hour, so well, 55 minutes to go. And we're going to start with a little presentation by Divya so that we understand the problem fully. And while, of course, we are talking about oceans or plastics in the ocean, this, of course, also ties into the TFF food sustainability topic, because the water in our oceans or the water anywhere being full with plastic will eventually also be in the other end in the food system and then grow into our bodies and affect our day-to-day. So, of course, like always, the food system or our world is so much more complex than just one thing at a time. It's really about thinking of it in the bigger picture. And so today we're doing that. Feel free to interact with us. I can already see some messages in the chat, which is really nice. So feel free to ask us some questions in there. Use the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom in the middle of your screen, or just the chats. We'll definitely get to them later in the session. And we're also going to have some polls today, so get ready for that. But for now, I'm going to welcome Divya to introduce herself a little bit and then the topic.
Hello, everybody. Well, I'm going to first start off by sharing my screen to... Okay, there you go. Let me know if you are able to see it.
Not quite yet, but in the meantime, you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am Divya Mohan and I'm a food technologist, as you mentioned. I'm also the founder of Ooble Innovations. At Ooble, we make products that are edible, sustainable, and make you go, ooh. So gonna see quickly, trying to, okay. I think we're done now and you should be able to, I have to, let me see. Are you able to see the screen now?
Not quite yet, no.
Okay, I think I will have to quickly drop out and come in according to what it's telling me. So if you could just give me a couple of seconds I'm just going to stop.
Oh, here we go. Stay here. Stay
Perfect.
here.
We've got you. Marin.
Stay with us.
Oh,
We can see your screen.
perfect.
We can see Kind to the Ocean with Divya, and we're very excited to hear all about it.
Perfect. So as I'm starting the session, what I really wanted to do was give you a full picture of what exactly lies there in the ocean and give you a visualization of how we are impacting the ocean. And this is really going to be about 15 minutes of me talking or going through what kind of a vast and enormous sort of platform the ocean is, and how exactly our impact is towards it, and how we can truly be kind to the ocean. So to start off, what I'm going to do is try and share a poll with all of you, just to see if the poll is working. I am going to, let's see, how do I get, I'm going to start with my first poll, and I want all of you to be extremely honest in this poll, right? The first question is, are any of you in your pajama pants? Let's see, do you guys have the poll? Great, okay, we have some very honest people on the poll. Okay, so many of you have kept it professional, which is great. So now I know the poll works, so let's get started to the presentation. Okay, I'm gonna give you 5 different numbers, and these 5 numbers basically represent 5 different facts about the ocean. And I'm going to also launch polls that you have to tell me what is the closest fact you think this number represents, okay? So I'm going to launch the first poll, and your first number is this. What do you think this represents? I don't think I can handle the poll and the screen together, so.
I got you.
Okay, perfect.
Just tell me when you need it.
Yeah, this is the first poll. So if you guys can tell me what this number closest represents towards the poll, that would be the start. Do we have some answers?
Yes. So you can't see the responses right now, Divya?
No, I cannot.
Well, then let me tell you what we've got.
Yeah.
We've got 80% of people, an overwhelming majority, thinking that 80% is, 70%, sorry, is the percent of the planet the ocean covers.
Perfect. So we have people who already know a lot about the ocean, because 70% is how much the ocean covers our planet. Let's go to the next question. Then if you could launch the second question for us. This is the number 5. What do you think this number signifies?
Hang on.
Sure.
Got it. Yes. The poll is live now, guys.
How do you think the number 5 represents the ocean?
So we've got some votes coming in.
I think that's the wrong question, though. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm going to end this and put the right one on. It's the second poll. But there you go. Now you have the question, okay, and you have to tell me how the number 5 represents one of these points. Okay, so we have a lot of people saying maybe types of water bodies, people who explore the Mariana Trench, and number of major ocean basins. The right answer is, it's the 5 different major ocean basins, which are Pacific Ocean, then the Atlantic Ocean, Indian Ocean, Southern Ocean, and the Arctic Ocean. So there's 5 different major ocean basins that exist. Can we go to the next one? The number is, so most of you were correct. That's still a good one. Let's see, the next one is the number 95%. What do you think this number represents? Okay, we have a lot of people saying it's the amount of the ocean unexplored. We have a few responses in amount of ocean that we have explored and species identified in the ocean. Well, most of you are going in the right direction. 95% is actually the amount of ocean that still remains unexplored. And this is just to give you an idea of how really vast and unexplored our ocean is. And also to give you a picture of we are actually impacting something that we don't really know so much about. There's so much of biodiversity and flora and fauna that remain unknown to us, and yet we today, because of our actions, are having an impact of it. So with 77% and a huge majority going in that direction, that is the percentage of ocean that is unexplored. Let's go to the next one. And the next number is a bit more specific. It is 10,927. What do you think this number represents? Is it the species of fishes classified? Is it the number of ships allowed to drill our oceans, the number of islands within our oceans, or the deepest solo dive? So we have a lot of people saying it could represent the species of fishes in the ocean, some talking about the number of islands. So it's a divided crowd that we have with different kind of answers, which is good because now we know we're trying to learn something more specific. 10,927 represents the deepest solo dive, or the record for the deepest solo dive that was done in 2019 by an ocean explorer called Victor Vescovo. Victor Vescovo, when he went to this deepest part, which is a part of the deepest ocean trench called the Mariana Trench. So this is 11 kilometers below ocean level. And when he went there, he saw something. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what he saw, and I want you to think about what it could be. But before that, let's go to the next number. And this is the last number that is going to be related to the ocean. What do you think this number signifies? 20 million. Species of fish classified. We have, it's the number of plastic entering ocean every day. So it's a divide between two different answers with, okay, we have some more coming in, but it's a battle between the two. Okay, we have some also going for the coral reefs being destroyed. This sounds like a fantastic game. I love this pose. All right, so the majority of people say it's the plastic entering the ocean every day, and that is correct. It is 20 million kilograms of plastic that is entering our oceans every single day. Yes, we all are aware that we are producing plastic, and we all are aware that we're throwing it away. But where is it exactly going? In order to understand that, we have come to a situation where before we used to have a saying that used to scare us, that is water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. Today we live in a planet where it is plastic, plastic everywhere, and it is not going anywhere. Now, if you just take the aspect of food packaging or packaging within plastic, of the close to 78 million metric tons of plastic packaging that is produced every single year, close to 14% is being recycled. That's about it. Not that recycling is more sustainable, but let's keep that aside. What is happening to the rest of the plastic? Most of them end up in landfills and eventually get washed away to our water bodies. Where does it end up? In our oceans. So what exactly happens to plastic in the ocean? Plastic breaks down, and then they break down even further and disappear. Do they disappear and go away? No. They disappear into something called microplastic. Microplastic are plastic particles that are less than 5 millimeters in size. These microplastics often come in different colors and get confused by small fishes and therefore get consumed by them. These fishes get consumed by other birds, get consumed by bigger fishes, and guess where all of this lands up? On our plates, in our system. This entire chain of plastic starts entering more and more into our food web or food chain every single day. And that is exactly the problem that we're facing. So is this microplastic harmful? Well, you don't see it. How much can it really impact us? Now, all of us have some sort of an understanding of how plastic is affecting us as human beings. Today, I'm going to talk about three different marine creatures, three magnanimous marine creatures that are getting impacted by microplastic. So I want all of you to first take a deep breath. That helped my nose. But the oxygen you just took in, part of it is produced by this organism. This organism is called phytoplankton. These are microscopic species or organisms that live in our oceans, and they are responsible for 70% of the oxygen that is in Earth. These phytoplankton that are present in the oceans take in sunlight, take in carbon dioxide, and produce oxygen. Now, with the increasing levels of microplastic in our oceans, what is happening is a lot of sunlight is getting blocked by these phytoplankton, and therefore it's causing the phytoplankton levels to decline. It is important to remember that phytoplankton is the basic building food in our food web. So if phytoplankton decline, that means it leads to a whole chain of species being endangered. Phytoplankton, in addition, has been reported to reduce almost 40% from what it was 70 years ago by several reports. And that is something we should be really concerned about because that impacts us humongously. Another species is the magnanimous, and I think all of you would have already guessed by taking one look at it, whales. This is a gray whale, and this is part of what is called baleen whales. Now, baleen whales have 14 different species of whales within their system. So it's basically humpback whales, blue whales, gray whales, and so on. These magnanimous, huge creatures have a very special feeding system called the baleen filter feeding system. They don't have teeth, instead they have filters in their mouth. So they take in a huge amount of water and other small creatures that come with it and filter the rest of the water out. They normally feed on phytoplankton, they feed on zooplankton, which are also microscopic organisms, and small krill. It has been reported that more and more amount of microplastic is being found in their baleen filter system. And this is directly clogging their feeding system, therefore impacting their number and their health very directly. Now I want to talk to you about another beautiful marine creature, the sea turtle. Now the sea turtles are very unique in the way that when they have to lay eggs, they go all the way to the coast, dig up dig up sand, lay their eggs, cover it up, and go back to the ocean. Now what is interesting is sea turtles, some species of sea turtles have this unique characteristics of having a temperature dependent sex determination of their eggs. So the eggs that hatch out, depending on the incubation temperature, can be male or female. So if the temperature is cold, or if it is less than 27.7 degrees Celsius, they tend to be mostly male. And if the temperature is above a certain temperature, which is about 31 degrees Celsius, they tend to be born female. When they go and lay their eggs in the coastal plains, because of the increasing amount of microplastic in the oceans or in the beaches and in the coastal areas, what is happening is plastic is absorbing heat from the sun and therefore making it more warmer and directly impacting the sex or gender ratio between the kind of turtles that are being born, impacting and endangering the species as a whole. So the kind of impact plastic is having is not just for these species, but really every single species that exists. And in some way, all comes back to how we are consuming. In the food packaging industry, the use of packaging is important, and plastic plays a very major role in maintaining the 5 key things of finding good packaging, which is it should be safe, reliable, shelf stable, clean, and convenient. And plastic is all that. It's also extremely cheap. It's also very formable and very easy to use in different temperatures and conditions. However, it is important for us to rethink consumption because this is about balance. In some cases, there's a lot of arguments that you do need plastic, you do need this sort of packaging, but in many cases, you really don't. So how are we going to balance it out and knowing what is the actual need of the hour and how are we going to make that decision? Now, one of the main arguments for plastic is, of course, that it increases food shelf life. So if you get cucumbers that are wrapped in plastic packaging, they tend to have a shelf life from 4 days to 14 days, which is a really big improvement. But that piece of plastic that is wrapped around the cucumber turns out to be on our planet for the next century. So how do we make that change? Because as we have seen through experience and also in the past few slides, the impact it is making is leading to huge changes in our biodiversity and our ecosystem. And one of the ways to do this is really to innovate, to think beyond how to solve the problem into how do we make several different small solutions to fight this issue. So it's not going to be one miraculous solution, but I think it's going to be small different innovations that can help us tackle the problem of plastic. And one of the solutions that I'm working on is straws. Now, I just want to ask a question, and you can think to yourself, have you ever used a plastic straw before? Well, I had, and so has Ryan. He's giving a big nod to it. So with plastic straws, the problem is that close to 1 billion straws are used every single day globally. Enough straws to go around the Earth's circumference almost 4.5 times. Plastic straws are small in size, they pollute our landfills, affect our marine life, and also because of their small size, they're also difficult to recycle. Yes, we know that it's a small little entity, but the impact it is creating is huge. It is the 7th biggest pollutant of our ocean today. We know plastic is a problem. We know we don't want plastic straws. So are there alternatives? So with straws, there are certain other alternatives, but they don't have the same functionality and the same acceptability as plastic straws do, which is why they're not as used. So when making an alternative, it is also important to understand why are consumers using a certain product and really take in a design thinking approach, which is what we used at Ooble. The reason why people use straws, or you and I use straws, is hygiene and convenience. With reusable straws that is going more in the market, the idea of hygiene gets lost, and many of the products that tend to be sustainable, which like paper straws, which are not truly sustainable, but they tend to be proclaimed as sustainable, they get soggy too quickly, and in 10 or 15 minutes, you can't drink with them anymore because the bits and pieces in your mouth. So as a solution, using all the drawbacks in the different alternatives, Ooble has developed a solution that is edible, that is biodegradable, that is cost-effective. I cannot see what the rest, but it's cost-effective and most importantly, plant-based. These are also straws that come in different flavors and different nutrient profiles. So we have made straws that are not only functional, but are also value added. So right now, if you're sitting in a hot summer day, which is not where I'm sitting, I'm in Sweden, it's cold as hell. But if you're sitting in a hot summer day, you can drink a cold pina colada and have a mint flavored straw. It's as simple as sip, gulp, and munch. Now, while creating this product, taking into consideration functionality, we had to choose ingredients that, first of all, are sourced correctly, because the idea is not just to have the right end product that is sustainable, but go the whole sustainability in the whole chain. So have the right ingredients. And in terms of functionality, have a straw that does not impact the taste of the product. And then after you finish it, you can bite into the straw to get a rush of flavor depending on the flavor you select of the straw. Now with Ooble, the idea is to make solutions that are edible and sustainable, but we think that to make a holistic change, it has to be ideas that really become food heroes, that really become products that change the way we consume and help us make kind switches. Yeah, so that was my introduction to ocean plastic and how I am, in my small way, trying to change the way we consume. But now maybe I should open up the conversation to a panel discussion with Ryan and Gerald, because I'm very curious to hear what they have to say. But let me stop sharing my screen now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Divya. That was a great introduction. And it's really nice to hear how you're tackling the problem and where your motivation for it came from as well. So Ryan, do you want to tell us about what you're doing in this sector and how you were motivated to make a change?
And first of all, I apologize for not nodding and saying that I use plastic straws. I haven't done it for a while because I probably just haven't been outside. Like at home, there's no need to use a straw, right? So yeah, my name's Ryan. I'm one of the co-founders of AEROPOWDER. We're a startup based in London, and yeah, we won the Kirchner Award in 2018 with our company and our project. We create Plumo, which is the world's first sustainable thermal packaging material made from surplus feathers. So a huge topic at the moment is food deliveries. And if you're sending fresh food, that's going to need some insulation material, otherwise the food will spoil. Traditionally, that's been expanded polystyrene. It's a fantastic insulator. It's just terrible for the environment. So expanded polystyrene, styrofoam, we have come up with a solution that basically uses the insulation power of feathers to protect your food and keep it cool during transport. And I think it's a pretty great idea because we're using a waste from the food industry to, provide a packaging solution for food. So I think it touches on a lot of important topics about sustainability moving forward. And that's me. Yeah.
I love it. I think the buzzword there that you haven't mentioned yet, but has already fallen in chat, is circular economy, which of course we're all for, and there's lots to do. So that is that you don't have a linear system where you use something and then waste it at the end or throw it away at the end, but where everything gets reused continuously and hence circularity. Gerald, tell us about how you fit into this.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. Great presentation, Divya. Wow, I was struggling with the Q&A. Really good questions that made me think. Yeah, and I would really want to try your Ooble. But first, introducing myself. Well, I'm a former TFF, co-founder of FoPo. Now I work as global packaging innovation specialist and sustainability lead for AB InBev. So what I do is I focus on achieving our 2025 circular packaging goals. By the way, AB InBev, Anheuser-Busch InBev is like the makers of Budweiser, Corona, Beck's, and other good stuff. So yeah, and I'm focusing primarily on one of the sustainability pillars that we have, which is circular packaging, wherein we ensure that all our products should be in packaging that is either reusable or made of majority recycled content. So yeah, and aside from that, I'm also the founding director of Rethink Plastic organization. So we are an NGO that is dedicated to understanding world's plastic addiction and promoting new material innovations and acting against plastic waste. So there.
So
let's get started.
I think we get started with our discussion.
I hope there's a delay. I thought there was a delay.
No, you're good. You're good. I think it's really interesting. So I can tell you a little bit that when I started Ooble, or it used to be called the Edibles, one of the things that I struggled with was I was developing a product. It was, a huge process of just understanding how to develop it. But one of the things I really found difficult was, how do you package a sustainable packaging? Right? So the question of, yes, I'm making something edible, I'm making straws, but how do you package something sustainable? And then I came into this whole world of alternatives, but not everything seem as they appear sustainable, but they may not truly be sustainable. I just wanted to hear your thoughts and your opinions on how do you justify something is sustainable, something is not.
I'll go first. We'll just figure out the order at some point. Normally we just can just point, but I don't even think we're in the same boxes for everyone. Anyway, so I think it's as I think TFF, I'm not sure. Are we still saying multispectral thinking? Christine will probably go crazy in the chat when I said that. So really, like, it's completely a very complicated topic. And the first thing this is a great starting point to say, there are so many questions beyond plastic equals bad. And I think that when you're looking at what is sustainable, first of all, I'm not going to attack, I guess, any company, organization, or person that is attempting to do better, even if that only seems like 1 or 2 steps. But again, being bold, we need to be thinking about how do we really, what is sustainable? How do we go all the way? And I think when you do that, you need to be recognizing, you know, where's your material coming from? How is it being used? What is happening at the end? And that, I don't know if there is, we can just call things as one sort of score, call it carbon impacts, call it whatever you're going to call, because, you know, equally the question of, I think there's a disconnect between ocean plastics problem and the global warming. They are related, but there are slightly different topics going on about carbon impacts versus a fish is eating some plastic, right? But how do we unify that, and how do we have a structured conversation? Because all the solutions are going to be so different that how do we argue that a straw is better or worse than a thermal packaging solution in terms of its goodness in the world? And I think that's super difficult to do. We're obviously making strides with things like, you know, carbon footprints and these kind of things, and looking through the whole supply chain. And we talk about the circular economy. You know, how do you judge, you know, when things go around in a circle, are we using the right measurements to understand that you can compare one with the other? I think it's super difficult, and there are lots of important questions to be asked. And I'm sure Gerald, because he's looking at the fight against plastics, especially in sort of a big business, probably can give some other inputs. And I put him on the spot. I apologize.
You did. You just did.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a good starting point. And when you ask particularly, like, how do you package a sustainable solution? And I mean, well, first of all, I think we should borrow one of the key elements of circular economy, which is you should design for the system and not just for the user. And when you design a product, you just don't make the product itself, but make sure that how it goes through the whole cycle, you manage it properly, right? And then you make the smallest loop within the butterfly model in the circular economy, circular model. Yeah, so well, having a systems thinking would be very important, and in terms of how you decide like if the product is sustainable or not. And sustainability definitely is a very complicated term, and it's a very abused word as well. It has a lot of meaning, but everyone interprets it differently. And particularly for LCA, we were studying, I mean, we're from Sweden. We studied in Lund University, Divya. But yeah, and that's when I first actually learned about LCA, and that things are more complicated than just the simple material. If you look at a production of plastic from one country versus the other country, like the energy source, everything, all the resources that are put into it has to be accounted for as well. And that's how you look at the whole life cycle. And LCA, for example, has 3 impact categories, and it also converges into 3 end indicators: damage to resource availability, damage to human health, and damage to ecosystems. Carbon, an indicator such as like carbon emission is just one, but then how do we account for the damage to ecosystems? That's a very tricky question to answer, and that's always the key challenge internally as well, because we communicate in terms of carbon emissions, but then its impact to aquatic species, for example, that's hard to quantify. And my fear is that what if we actually manage to achieve the Paris Agreement in keeping the temperature, but then what if we poison all the marine species in the world before we achieve that? So I'm just wondering, like, that question is still left in my mind, and I would like to know what you think. But I was just thinking we need a different approach on how we evaluate sustainability, and it's very complicated and interconnected.
Yeah, I think those are some extremely interesting points, and I'm learning a lot just by listening to the two of you. I have to say, when I started, you know, I came very little knowledge about sustainability or circular economy or materials. I came in with a little bit of a clean slate, especially in Sweden, where I am right now. Almost every other sentence speaks of sustainability. Like, kids know about it, everybody talks about it. It's such an open conversation around it. Just something like seeing a recycling system here was so new to me. I come from India, and I don't know, the kind of things we were seeing, and it was such a different way of life. Today I'm having, storing my nuts in glass bottles that I reuse. It's just such a different way of thinking. And like you rightly said, Gerald, it's complicated, yet it's very specific country-wise. Everyone has to deal with it a little bit differently. There's no one solution fits all, as you say. So when you talk about, yes, we're going to achieve certain numbers, but sustainability is more complicated than that. What do you think our roles really are? How should we really approach this? We are students, we are future entrepreneurs, we are people who might take small decisions in our organizations, but where do you think the focus should be, if not, just the temporary, or just plastic, or just, so where should our focus be? What do you think?
We'll go again in the same order. Give Gerald's voice box a brief break. So I think I've definitely come across very specific things with what we're doing at AEROPOWDER that's made me think, there is a role for, myself and what I can do towards this fight. And I think it's beyond just being like a member of the public. I'm trying to come up with an innovative, let's say, plastic alternative solution. There are some challenges to that, and there are some very specific, we're still generating a packaging material, and there are some considerations about that. What's happening to a plumo after we use it, and we can design for a bunch of different end of life scenarios, some compostability, or looking at how energy can be recovered from it, for example, reusing it in a take back system. And for all you can work on the pieces of paper about this will be great here, this will be great there, you've got to look outside and go, right, what's actually going to happen? Yeah. Is it going to just get thrown away in landfill? What are the impacts of that? But what I'm really, really hoping to do in the future is that people like myself, people like yourselves with kind of, let's say, kooky, different alternative materials, I think there should be a push together. A lot of these things are technically possible, but just not implemented in the system or society or policy or whatever you're going to call it. But a shift that if we band together and say, hey, I'm making something with feathers, you're making something with mushrooms, you're making something with plants, together we can be a strong voice to say, look, there is a real need for these materials to be disposed of or reused in a certain way. That's not possible now. It was never needed before. Fine. Time to do something different. And I think that's something that we as entrepreneurs, as the young people of the future, can really kind of put pressure on in the right places. And I just did a bit of, casual research before this, but, certain co-op here is implementing, a collection point for difficult to recycle plastics. These are all kind of things that weren't available before. And for whatever reason, they've decided, actually, we can do this. And yeah, okay, there might be a bit of a cost, but there's a reason we should be doing this. And I think that's something we can all fight for, to make changes in our systems, in our waste disposal, whatever you're going to call it, so that there can be practical, realistic alternative solutions. And that's my point. So
yeah. Gerald, do you want to add something to it?
Yes. I can hear you. Perfect. I don't know what's happening, but perfect. Well, what can we do about it, or what? I think that there's a lot of points that I would like to highlight. First, I think we need to believe in science in terms of how we explain things and sustainably. So one is like what COVID, I think, brought into light is that we should also put trust on our experts and scientists. So I think on how we should interpret data and what are the next best. Like, there are lots of new materials coming in, And yeah, there might be some new material that can solve the initial problems of plastic, but then it might cost something else eventually. So yeah, we just need to be aware of that impact as well. I mean, plastic has been a fantastic material up until what's happening now, right? So I guess that's it. Put that into perspective with the belief in science. Second is governments can really help in terms of moving lots of companies in the right direction. At least that's what I see in what we do in AB InBev, that like whatever the government rules are, that has a huge impact on what we work on, because we don't just plan for small things, but we prepare for the big shift moving forward. So that's really that's powerful, all the incentives that they're doing, as well as that also impacts also like consumer behavior. For example, like with, I believe in UK there will be now like deposit system soon, or for bottles, and that's coming by 2021 or some 2023. I don't know the timeline, but so now we're already like preparing for that as well, and that can also eventually shape how consumers then like interact with packaging in a different way. They see packaging not as a waste but as a value, right? So that has a huge impact. And then third, I think like consumers and awareness on what's happening right now, and particularly on right now you're focusing on straws, for example, but in the Philippines, when I was there last year, I was we were doing this pilot trial of collecting single-use sachets, and I was asking a very small community, a town, barangay we call it, and they always do like weekly cleanups, and and then I asked them, what are the top 3 waste that you collect during your weekly cleanups, and they said one are the like twigs, wood, leftover from trees, and second are single-use sachet, and of course, and then the third is diapers. And I was thinking about the diapers, and I'm like, what can we do about them? Should we actually collect them? And then that has a lot of risk factors as well. And then I was thinking, no, we should we should solve it from how we actually interact with diapers. We should use more of the reusable diapers. And I'm like, yeah, that should be the right way. It's not just about looking at different materials or different um, like different materials for the product, but also like a different way of approaching how we use things as well. So yeah, that we are working on that now. Just on a side note, last point, we're working on that in Rethink Plastic. We're launching something around reusable diapers, and we pilot these things. Like we should also we should have multidisciplinary approach as well in terms of how we solve this problem. That's it.
I just, before we jump over to the next question, but I'm just gonna, something you touched on about how, COVID, and I think one of the things that is very interesting about behavior that COVID has exposed is that very quickly some things we thought were completely not ever possible are now completely normal in people's lives, be it mask wearing, be it social distancing. And I think the message again to people watching or other people looking to create ideas is be bold, and perhaps some of the things that seem crazy now, with the right push and with the right environment, will suddenly become incredibly normal. And I think that's something that we've all got to push and hope for. Obviously without a pandemic, but you know what I mean, yeah.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think I can resonate with points that both of you mentioned. Like Ryan, you said, you know, it's not just about making a more sustainable approach, but seeing what happens to that packaging after, what exactly is the end of life for the packaging. And these become important questions because, for example, I'm talking about straws now because that's what I've researched a lot about. The first switch that came about, you know, they're going to ban single-use plastic. The first switch that all big companies like Starbucks or McDonald's and all companies came about was paper straws, without really understanding the full impact of making that switch, I would say, because it is not the most sustainable option, and neither is it functional. So I think this immediate shift just to make good of a situation for short term is another big problem we are facing when it comes to trying to get more sustainable than before. I also, I think, agree to your points where it's not, you don't really become fully sustainable, but it's small steps you take towards becoming sustainable. And you see that many a time we just rush into, okay, that looks sustainable, let's go there, let's put all our investment there without really understanding, like you said, the full picture of a product. As a part of Ooble itself, I have tried to incorporate different ways of being a little more sustainable in my life, you know, one step at a time. And in my head, I was like, you know, grocery bags, always use the one that's cloth bags. It's great. In fact, many supermarkets back at home in India now sell cloth bags. So you don't have to get plastic bags, you get cloth bags. Everybody were very happy with that decision. Then I go on to realize, just by a little bit of, you can just Google these things. And it says, one cloth bag is equal to making 1,800 plastic bags. That's the impact of a cloth bag. So it's not as simple as switch this to this, but really understand how do you switch it. You have to reuse it again and again and again for years for it to be less worse in impact as a plastic bag. Just like small things like that we can do in our every single day life can make such a big impact going forward. And that's one thing I think I learned over the years to make those small tiny switches, even though it's not a big impact. And another thing I resonated when you said, Gerald, that you were making these changes in ABBev, and I couldn't stop but think maybe that's another solution, to have people like you in these big companies giving those solutions to them, you know, really telling them what is the new technology and science out there, because maybe these big companies, they have the resources, they have the money, but they need the right people pushing them towards the direction and giving them that inclination to see how to incentivize what they're doing. And maybe
By the way, yeah. Just to add to that, yes, I am definitely leading this branch of the sustainability and circular packaging, wherein we partner with companies as well. If you have any technology innovations that you think can be applied to our products, that I'm definitely happy to connect and see where it goes.
Yeah. So yeah, basically. The idea of having more people talk about this, and going back a little bit, understanding what exactly we're talking about. Because, you know, I remember being in a discussion with some people saying, oh, we should reduce our carbon footprint. And they go, okay, what is that? And just understanding that not everybody truly understands what certain things we use so commonly mean. Maybe it's a too basic discussion, but that's something I also recognize, that we're using so many words and making sustainability sound maybe a little too complicated for an everyday man to really want to go towards that direction. Maybe it's getting intimidating for a lot of people to be attracted to it. Maybe like, you know, how Coca-Cola advertise their products in this fun, easy polar bear way. Maybe we should talk about sustainability a little bit like that, so it, you know, draws people attention towards it. But that was another thought I had. But coming to the point of circular, there's a few questions that are in the chat. Maybe I can address them right now and ask you people if you know anything about it. They're asking about databases for researching biomaterial design. Do you know of any databases where you can research biomaterial design? It's going a little off topic, but just to pick up some questions in between for the people watching.
The answer is I know they exist because I think we're on some of them, but I can't remember their names off the top of my head. If there is a follow-up, we can definitely share that round.
Yeah,
I
we'll
definitely
share
know
that
that
around,
people are building these databases and for example, are asking for us as in, there are material sample sort of libraries being built. And I think that's also an important way for, be it a company or you know, an organization that's looking to utilize sustainable materials. I think the incredibly difficult problem is how do you partner up material innovation with application need, and how do they both know both exist? And I think things like these databases are important. Sadly, I can't remember its name right this second, but we'll dig those out and share them around. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so I have another question from Magdalena, who is also watching us, who is talking about, who asked, can you develop a salt water soluble plastic packaging? Do we have any?
I don't know. That's really water soluble plastic packaging.
Salt water. So I do know there's some tapioca based plastic bags that I was seeing some videos on that you could just dissolve in hot water, but I'm not specifically sure if that would be the direction you're asking the question about.
Maybe not directly answering the question, but I would like to highlight that before you even create the packaging, maybe it's better to first focus on reusing the material of the packaging instead of creating a disposable single-use solution, or that you will dispose. And then, I mean, if it biodegrades and it emits methane, which is worse for the environment, just putting that into perspective as well before you develop anything.
I was reading in probably an article that when plastic was discovered, I think in the 1970, when it was discovered, it was not meant to be single-use at all. The reason for its discovery was to have a packaging material that could be reused hundreds and hundreds of times again. That was the basis of it. And it's funny, I wonder if the person who made it comes today and looks at how plastic is being used. I really want to know what his opinion would be of our consumption of plastic. But going on, I think I just want to go back a little bit about, to where we left off in our conversation, which is incentivization, right? So one of the ways that everybody sort of gets pulled to do anything is if you tell them, you get this if you do this. Do you think you have some ideas on how we can incentivize customers to invest in alternatives? Because today, they tend to be more expensive than plastic or other unsustainable options. So how else can you incentivize people?
Who's going to go?
Gerald,
Gerald,
yes.
Gerald, go.
Incentivizing people. That's one of the things that I'm actually looking at and studying right now, and it has a lot of approach on how we tackle that. But I think the easiest one that we can think of is, well, from the government perspective. For example, the biggest issue why we are not yet into 100% recycled plastic. I mean, a lot of companies are now launching those bottles made of 100% recycled plastic. But the biggest challenge there is that it's actually more expensive to buy recycled PET, right? It has 30% more premium than buying a virgin plastic material. And that's one of the biggest dilemma if you go to the sustainable path. And I think for governments to incentivize that, maybe put a tax on virgin plastic, so that, or at least make it more expensive or the same, then the choice is easier for companies and ultimately for consumers as well, if there's a lot of recycled plastic that's being used. So in terms of incentivization, there's a lot that can be done from the government side. There's a lot that can be done as well from the consumer side. Making it in a gamified way. I read this article that how you communicate sustainability properly to consumers, and ultimately the best way is, I mean, you can promote like all the ice caps melting, but you can also promote it in a way that it will compare people with each other and how they're faring in terms of sustainability. And by saying that, I mean, and having those accounts or those quantification factors or set up that we can we can we can apply in what we do, maybe that can really help, because we cannot change what we cannot measure. So I guess that's one of the things that we can also work at for incentivization.
Yeah.
And very quickly, I think I was having very similar thoughts. I was thinking, what if in the near future we're placing all these orders online with a supermarket, or let's say you shop at a supermarket, and as well as getting sort of the cost breakdown of on your receipts, we already get labeling on sort of the nutritional value and whether that's good or bad for you. What if we start seeing sort of the impact of this plastic or this packaging you've got on the label, or maybe as a spit out at the end of your shop? And I think these little, they can both be sort of semi guilt tripping, but also quite positive reinforcement, being like, you brought back this much plastic today, thank you. Like, when you start having these numbers, it's going to start having a mental effect. And I think there's also, we think of financial rewards that you talked about, the bottle recycling scheme. Doesn't have to be straight money. It could be that you bring in your plastic bags and you get a cup of tea or something. There are different little small things that we can do to slowly shift the mindset that this is normal and this is how we all should act, just because it's the way we should do things. I once asked someone at a house party who basically didn't agree with recycling. Was it recycling? Yes, didn't agree with recycling. And I was asking, why is that the case? And he goes, I just I haven't got the time for it, don't believe it. And I asked him, why do you, if you drop stuff on the floor, do you put it in the bin? He goes, well, yeah, when I'm outside. And I think there's just normalized behavior that you can sort of integrate into people. And I think that also we need to be thinking, if you think of things as a big system, you need to be thinking about what are the gains and losses at different parts of the chain, and do you really need parties at the top, maybe in the manufacturing side, to be speaking and working with maybe a direct consumer point to say, can we work together and set up the take back system? You don't just need to do this yourself. We all need to work on this together. And incentives can then be worked out and passed along that chain. Don't just have to think of it as, well, I'm a company that sells this, I need to figure out myself how I can reimburse a customer and sweeten the pot. We should all be involved in sweetening that pot and working that out together.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it is doing that holistic understanding of how to make people go more and more towards the idea of being okay with sustainability and also making those choices. I hear that we're running out of time and we're coming close to the end of our discussion, but it is really interesting. And what I really picked up is that there is no one answer, and it's really about everybody doing a little towards becoming more sustainable and finding innovative ways. And with innovation comes different mindsets and using different ways of thinking, and need of people from multi-spectral thinking, as we have always made very clear in TFF. But let's start with one last, let's end with one last quick question that I have, which is, do you have a sustainability tip that you always go by for people?
What, do I just walk up to one person and go, hey, here's my sustainable tip? I think big one for me is food waste in general. And I think that we all need to be a little less lazy with the food we eat, what we're preparing, what we're throwing away. And I think that makes a massive impact. And I'm always a big one. I love to cook. I'm always a big one for just not getting too lazy with the way I'm, using the food that I need to eat. So I think that's my main tip, is just cut out that food waste.
That's a fantastic tip. That's a very important tip as well. Gerald.
Right. Well, for me, I think, that's really a tough question. I mean, there's a lot of areas you can go to, right?
Yeah.
For me, I think starting on my own, there's a lot of things that you can already do. I think what you can at least feel is that it's fine to be imperfect. You don't have to be a perfect eco warrior. Maybe you're doing something already, even just one, and then maybe you're still doing some unsustainable stuff. But I mean, you're going to the right direction, and that's fine. I think we need to encourage. We don't have to bash everyone who just takes out paper straws and then do something unsustainable the next time. Like we are all in adjusting in our own ways, and I think as long as you're in the right mindset and in the right path, and just gather enough more information on what is really the most sustainable, because even the world doesn't know, right? So we're doing our best, and I guess just start now. That's it.
That's a lovely, lovely input, I think. And I mean, if somebody takes out a paper straw, I'll give them an Ooble straw. That's basically my approach to it. But I think a tip, if I could just add something that I have, is one of the things I've started doing in the past 2 or 3 years is really asking myself, do I really need it? To start with, reducing consumption can really go a long way. I've realized, and before even understanding or trying to do what do we do with something, do you really need to buy something, or do you really need to get something? So it starts with reduction, I would say. Out of the 3 R's, that's my favorite R. Reduce, recycle, and reuse. I think reduce should be your primary goal, then reuse, and then recycle. I've started to understand.
Before that, there's the 4th R. There's rethink.
Lovely. There you go. So
that's why we have rethink plastic.
But thank you so much for this, and thank you so much for everybody who are watching and have been part of it and taking part of and sending us questions and your inputs, and a lovely song I also saw, which I have to listen to right after the session. And thank you, Ryan and Gerald. I learned so much from your wisdom and your words that you just gave me today.
And now we have none left. So, yeah.
No, it's spread to everyone.
And thank you, Marie and Yana, for organizing this. This has been lovely. So all 3 of us being part of TFF, I think, have gained so much from this collaborative effort and this team that has built over the past 3 years that I've been a part of it, but years that TFF has organized, is bringing people who think differently and really building a family, really. So it's nice to have 2 more people that I can have my sustainability questions to now.
Yes, well, thank you for that. That is a beautiful way to round it up. And TFF loves doing that. We're all about connecting the dots, being bold, which is something that Ryan said, and like supporting you in your boldness and in your vision. And I think you already rounded it off beautifully, but I will leave us with one quote that Gerald said earlier that I really liked: design for the system and not for the user. Think about the bigger picture, do the rethink as opposed to the other 3 R's. But thanks so much for sharing all your views and your knowledge about this in the chat. We have lots of people saying how great it was, how much they learned. I also learned a lot. And I hope to see you in one of our next live sessions. So have a lovely evening or morning, wherever you are. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.